Welcome to Projection Reflection. I'm your host Coordinato, and this is a special guest we have today is one of my best friends, Dylan.
Hey.
Dylan and I, we've been friends for quite a while, and we both share a huge love for
movies in general.
Just movies in general. We always talk about movies.
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about one of my personal favorites, Spider-Man, the 2002 comic book action film, and me and Dylan probably talk about the trilogy the most.
Probably, we talk about this a lot, more than most movies. And this movie's almost 20 years old.
Which is crazy to think.
Yeah.
But...
the reason we talk about it so much is it comes up a lot, and when we pretty much compare every new superhero movie that comes out. We pretty much judge it against the Raimi trilogy.
Yeah, well, the first two specifically.
Yeah.
The first two movies specifically. Okay, this film, man, it was directed by Sam Raimi, of all people.
He's well known for, before the Spider-Man series, he was mostly known for Evil Dead, the very graphic, gory horror comedy series. Mm-hmm. So kind of an outside-the-box choice that Sony made, but ultimately really paid off.
Yeah, it did, I guarantee they were just thinking, we're just going to go on a limb
and
choose Sam Raimi.
I really wonder how they ended up picking him. I'd be interested to look that up at some point, but... Yeah, like I said, Sam Raimi, director, good choice.
Incredible choice. It starred Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man and Peter Parker, Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, Willem Dafoe as Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin, Rosemary Harris as Aunt May, Cliff Robinson as Uncle Ben. And J.K. Simmons as J.
Of course, how could you forget him?
We can never forget J. Jonah Jameson. Let's get into the plot of this movie.
Yeah, just run through it.
The major plot of the movie is...
Spoiler alert for this 20-year-old movie, by the way.
Yeah, it's if you haven't seen it by now, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, other than I can tell you Uncle Ben dies.
That's brand new news. I didn't know that. This is brand new news.
Alright, so yeah, for real, spoiler alert.
Yeah, tons of spoilers. The plot of the film is it's the origin story of Spider-Man. It's basically two origin stories. The origin story of Peter Parker as becoming Spider-Man, and the origin story of Norman Osborn becoming the Green Goblin.
Right.
And how they both go completely separate ways.
And it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty much it's an origin story. That's what it is. It doesn't try and really overdo anything else than that. It's just telling you where Peter Parker, Spider-Man, came from.
I will say this, when it comes to origin stories for superheroes, this film is the closest to the source material.
Yeah, it really, really is. As far as, classic Spider-Man, Ditko, Stan Lee, sort of thing.
The other big plot of this film is, of course, the love story between both Mary Jane and Peter Parker, and also the relationship between Peter and his best friend Harry.
Right.
And how that relationship is kind of a little bit becoming strained in this film.
A little bit in this one.
A little bit in this
one. The trilogy will expand upon it later, but at this point, they're all pretty much friends. At this point, he's still pretty much getting to know Mary Jane, and he's learning about the responsibility of being Spider-Man for the first time in his life.
Yeah, main plot, origin story, Spider-Man versus Green Goblin. That's the basis of the film. There's not really much else to go on, but a big chunk of the film is the origin story.
Well, that is the movie, yeah.
The movie the three characters that it stays on is, of course, Harry, Peter, and Norman Osborn. Mary Jane, she's given a little bit in this film, but she's kind of pushed to the side.
Right. At this point, it's really the meat of the movie is contrasting Norman Osborn and Peter Parker are both granted pretty amazing powers in this movie, and the real meat of the movie is showing what to do if you gain great power, and what not to do if you gain great power.
With great, as Uncle Ben once said, with great power comes great
And
responsibility.
as Uncle Ben actually said in this movie,
Which it irks me all the time. Like in the new Spider-Man films, in the Andrew Garfield, the Andrew Garfield movies, and in the Tom Holland movies, they can never say with great power
Yeah.
comes great responsibility. What's up with that?
I don't know.
Do they have a
I really
problem?
don't know why they haven't said that anymore.
I mean, it's one of the.
They had a very clunky version in the Andrew Garfield ones, but
It's the essence of the character.
yeah.
Well, what would you? Let's get into more so what the music of the film.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Oh,
we said Sam Raimi was an outside the box choice for director. They picked the most inside the box choice composer they could have done, and he was perfect for
yeah,
it.
Danny
They
Elfman.
picked Danny Elfman, who's so well known for the Batman theme song.
Which I would say, and I think you agree with me on this, that this score is actually better than the
I
Batman
think so.
score. Like the Spider-Man theme is better than the Batman theme.
The Batman. Well, I don't want to go that
Okay,
far.
yeah, okay.
The
yeah,
Batman theme is iconic, but I'd say like the Batman theme is iconic, but overall, like
The overall score.
overall score of the movie Spider-Man, I'd say is better overall. The Spider-Man theme is. It might not be as instantly catchy as the Batman theme is, but it's a great theme. The second the movie begins with that with that classic intro. Also, was this the first time that we actually saw what Marvel was known for a long time? That had that red intro with the comics.
I think it was
flipping?
the first. It might have been the first time. I don't know if they showed it in the
I don't
X-Men movie.
think
or not.
We'll have to go double check on that, but I think that was the first time we saw that because I don't think the first X-Men had that yet.
I like that in this
So,
they
like-
don't like to go like in the new Marvel movies. Now they're kind of going over the top with
Yeah.
it, but now it's just like it's just showing them comic clips.
This movie was just like I said, just from the very start. You see, to me, it was one of the best intros for any movie studio ever. That classic red Marvel with the comic pages flipping. Then it cuts into that awesome credit sequence where it's just Danny Elfman's score
with spiderwebs,
with just spiderwebs, just
image
like
of Spider-Man, Green Goblin.
nothing direct, just like kind of abstract images of spiderwebs and stuff with the actors and everything listed. But
We'll talk about this in the next review for Spider-Man 2, but it's even
it gets
better
even better in
in
the second one. It
Spider-Man
is
2.
better. But from the start, just from that very first intro with that fantastic music
It gets you
and that awesome, just that cool credit sequence, it shows you how much that everybody that made this movie, whoever was the anonymous people that must have worked on that intro, everybody in this movie clearly had a love for Spider-Man.
Amazing. Well, Sam Raimi, it was said that he
Yeah.
actually, as a kid, had a mural of Spider-Man on his wall.
Mm-hmm.
So the dude was already a huge, massive Spider-Man fan, and he really showed his love for the character in this
Right.
movie. And even the script, I'm not sure who the script writer was in this movie, but the guy who wrote the script could also had like a love for like comic book dialogue.
definitely. It's definitely very comic booky. Some of the newer Marvel movies have a kind of more natural dialogue. This dialogue in this movie is definitely comic booky.
Let's talk about effects.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about a movie from 2002, so
I mean, some
Okay.
parts are good, some parts are bad. Especially the one CGI scene where Peter's like heading to take out the burglar, the killer.
does he have like an official name, or is he just like
the robber?
Yeah,
man
the-
who killed Uncle Ben,
the bad man,
the bad guy.
the bad guy with the gross frosted tips things? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, the effects are pretty. They show their age
Pretty
there.
choppy, like
Yeah.
especially in that part. In certain parts, like I love that in this film they have a good mixture of both practical effects
Right.
and CGI effects.
And sometimes even like you can see Sam Raimi's horror origin, like the scene when Norman Osborn first, the back to formula. See when he first breaks out of his tank and he's like been infused with his goblin power. It's almost shot like reminds me of the Evil Dead movies, the way it's shot.
Mm-hmm.
But then some of the other effects do hold up, and like the practical effects look great in this. But even some of the CGI looks good. Like when we were saying talking about it when we were watching the movie, the weight, like there actually like seems to be real weight to swinging.
Oh, it's like there's a romanticism to the swinging in this.
Yeah.
Like with every move, with every punch in this film, like you said, there's a weight to it.
Yeah.
And you can feel every punch, like especially in the ending scene,
Right.
where they're in that like the set, where this like it's a beautiful set.
It is cool.
Like,
It's very old school gothic looking set.
and that had to be another horror element.
Horror
for-
influence.
But oh man, that fight because
It's a surprisingly like low key fight. It's like you're so used to movies nowadays. Whenever the climax is like, there's always some giant beam in the sky, the whole world's in danger, like, or at least the whole city's in danger. This was just two dudes that did not like each other brawling in an empty, ruined house, and it was rough. Like there was blood.
There was blood. There was spit. There was like
Yeah.
you see like Green Goblin go for a punch, and you see
Like,
like
the guys
and the
like
spit like comes out of his mouth.
like the dudes are breathing heavy. Like you don't even see. Think about it. You don't even see like superheroes lose their breath anymore.
No, you don't. Like in this,
Goblin and Spider-Man were panting hard in this match. I almost called it a match. It was like watching an MMA fight.
and of course they showed
like-
amazing battle damage on
Yeah.
both of them, especially on Spider-Man on his suit.
That's honestly something I'd forgotten about. I think when we first saw this movie, that sort of thing was more common. They didn't have like the access to all the CGI and everything that they do nowadays to create these huge battles. So like they were just like think about back then, like Gladiator, like it's like a Face Off. The fights were kind of like just more, gritty. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't. It was because they couldn't do much more than that. So they just had to make. They just had to make punches look like they hurt. They had to make kicks look like they hurt. And like even in this movie, even a superhero movie like this, it had that kind of grit feel to the fight.
It's in the grit. That grit
Which
is kind
is-
of like what's comic book movies
Yeah.
need now.
Which is funny because the rest of the movie isn't really. I would not use the word gritty to describe this movie. Like I would say Logan was a gritty movie. This was a pretty cut and dry comic book like fantasy film.
But like the two, I think that fight scene at the end, and then the fight scene in the burning
building,
which the Matrix moment.
Yeah,
and that
can definitely tell this only came out 2 years after the Matrix
he's
because
throwing the goblin
Yeah.
pumpkin, and it bursts, and the blades are zooming at Spider-Man, which I do love that part where he's like ducking, and especially when he goes like this, and then the two blades hit each other and explode.
it's pretty sweet. I still don't understand what the Goblin's plan there was, but it was pretty cool.
Another thing to go along with the effects is the part where Spider-Man's kind of using. He uses the environment, like you can definitely show, like when he slingshots himself to the bridge, and then another scene with the Macy Gray parade scene is where he's bouncing on the balloon.
Which I never even really noticed that until we watched it today. He pointed it out to me, but it's such a naturalistic movement. It just like you don't even think about it. It just seems like what someone would do, like what Spider-Man would do.
Well, let's see. We talked about the plot. We talked about the music. We talked about the effects. Let's get into since we only got a little bit of time here, let's get into a little bit about our favorite parts of the film.
Yeah.
Definitely James. What was it? James Franco and Willem Dafoe's relationship. It seemed very believable.
I mean, from the start, it was just great casting. Like they look like father and son.
Yeah, the whole cast in general was just a great cast.
Yeah, Rosemary Harris as Aunt May looked like she stepped straight out of the comic book pages, and she gives off such a warm and tender performance.
Very heartfelt. Another thing,
we already mentioned J. Jonah Jameson.
Same thing, straight out of the comic book.
He looks like he was 3D printed off like a comic book.
He's not even in the movie that much, and he makes such. It's
like everybody remembers him in this movie, but if you really watch it, he's probably only in it for about 6 minutes.
Yeah, and
he
has a great moment in this where Green Goblin's asking where's the man who takes the pictures of Spider-Man?
And he says, I don't know. He says he sends him in the mail. I don't know who he is. And
so that shows his humility. He's not such a bad guy. He gives off this rough exterior, but he's actually.
And it's like in 6 minutes of screen time, they were able to convey that this guy is obnoxious. He's like that. He's everybody's boss that they don't want to work for. But it shows that he's not a bad guy. Like when a push comes to shove, he's not a bad guy. And this movie does that with a lot. Uncle Ben probably is another character we probably really only see for about 6 to 10 minutes.
Little bit, but he's such a heartfelt character, and especially that scene between him and Peter in the car. It's heart-wrenching, and it's the last moment that you see him. But he gives such a great performance in this film that when he dies, it is just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
This movie, he's not seen in the movie that much, but it's heart-wrenching. Another thing I gotta say, Macho Man Randy Savage.
Greatest cameo ever.
I got you for 3 minutes! 3 minutes of playtime! The film, it's so over the top.
That's one scene where this film is not afraid that it's from the comic books, and when it came out in 2002, comic book movies weren't huge like they are now. We pretty much only had X-Men.
Yeah.
And everything else before that wasn't really a hit or anything. Blade was, people liked it, but it wasn't like a huge thing. Mm-hmm. But this movie was big, and when it came out, this was a big movie when it came out, and it was huge. It was not afraid of being a comic book movie. This movie just played things with even though it was a lighthearted, fun movie, and a lot of things it just plays no irony. Like they're just like there's a wrestling scene in the original comic they're like, we're gonna do a wrestling scene, and we're gonna hire Randy Savage to be the wrestler.
So this movie is just the origin story is so close to the original source material. Oh man, let's see.
Well, I guess we should talk about, even though she's not in it as much.
We gotta talk the story between Mary Jane and Peter.
Mary Jane and Peter, in a lot of ways, is the heart of the movie. And it does get expanded upon farther in the sequels, so if you're like a Mary Jane fan, don't worry, we see more of her.
It's not really over the top like other love story films, it's more quiet and
well, when the movie begins, they're not even really friends.
You know, they kind of become friends because she's dating...
Like, Mary Jane's a nice girl, and she's never mean to him, but she's
dating Harry.
She's not even dating him yet when it begins.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Mary Jane's a nice girl, and she's friendly to Peter, but he's so painfully awkward that they're not really friends.
Can we just say, I'm gonna skip back here, is when he is just so cringy of a nerd.
He really is.
In the beginning, like even when he gets on the bus, like the nerd girl, like the girl with the pigtails, glasses, she won't let him sit.
That's how much of a nerd she is. Like nerd girl will sit with him. Then there's this fucking fat ass with a donut. He won't let. This dude's a slob. This dude's a slob, and he's too cool for Peter to sit with. But that dude's a neckbeard fat
and
ass.
And that's the way that Peter Parker should be. He should be a nerd.
Yeah, like we're not here to knock like the later Spider-Man actors. They'll have their good parts and their bad parts, but none of them have caught in just how awkward Peter Parker is, how cringy he is, and how I think I saw on Facebook not too long ago.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you about
I saw on Facebook not too long ago, they asked the question, like, who's your favorite Peter Parker? And one of the top comments was like, some guy was like, I hate the Tobey Maguire version. He's just cringy and awkward to watch. I don't like to watch him as Peter Parker. He's like, that's not how a superhero should be. And like, if you click on the comments, there are a lot of people get it. There were so many comments that were just like, well, that's how Peter's supposed to be. Like,
he's supposed to be a nerd.
Like, he's a nerd. Like, he's not a cool guy. No one really looks up to Peter Parker. You don't, like, I could see people wanting to be Bruce Wayne. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be Peter Parker. Even after he gets his powers, that doesn't change the fact that he doesn't know how to talk to MJ. Like, he's able to climb up walls and punch through doors. He punched through the roof of a car, but when MJ talks to him, he still just awkwardly sits there with that goofy Tobey Maguire-ass smile, and you just want to strangle him. It's like, this girl is giving you signs.
Oh, man. Just the one scene between them where he has to tell her that he cannot be with her. Cause
it's the last scene in the movie.
Oh, it's heart-wrenching because he's like, I'll always be there for you.
Yeah.
And I'll always care for you, but it's like, I just want to be, and I'll always be your friend. And you're like, ooh.
And of course, we'll touch more upon their romance in the next movie. This movie does give us one of the most iconic shots from any superhero movie ever. That's Spider-Man and Mary Jane, the classic kiss in the upside down kiss in the rain.
Like, it is known as like definitely one of the classic kisses in film.
In film history, I truly believe that. I mean, I remember the MTV award was for that. they made a whole thing about that.
Yeah, this movie just everything about this movie, it is great. I mean, there's our little things that we do nitpick about.
I think I mean, obviously, I'll never know because I'm not a kid nowadays, but I'll have to think if I was a kid nowadays watching it. Some of the things, like Green Goblin's costume is it's not the great.
Yeah, it's not the
It could definitely use some improvement, and I could see, like, kids nowadays not understanding there's some of the acting in this is very, very melodramatic. It's very theatrical. Like, a lot of it's stuff like Peter Parker and Mary Jane is subdued and realistic, but all the comic book elements with like Green Goblin and stuff is very hammy, very melodramatic.
But it works so well for the movie.
Yeah, to me it works great too, but it might be a bit. I could see some people. I could see it being a turn off to some people. Not for me, but I could see it being a turn off for some people.
The main thing with this movie, is that it has so much heart. Like, you do not see that in superhero movies today.
It's up there with like movies like Wonder Woman or the classic Christopher Reeve Superman. And it's just nothing but it's like there's great action and adventure, but at its core there's a heart and soul to this movie and you can tell Sam Raimi and the rest of the crew and cast just
had a
major
love for Spider-Man. Like, in essence, this is Spider-Man to people like you and me. This is who Spider-Man is. Like, and Sam Raimi got it.
He does.
He knew who Spider-Man was. He knew who this character was and how we cared about this character. He cared about this character. He wanted to make such a great film, and he did.
So overall, what would you rate it?
I would say this film, I would give it like a 4.5 out of 5.
Me too. I want to say this is a perfect movie, but once you watch the second one, you'll see there's plenty of things that this one could be even better, and this one's a 4.5.
Yeah, 4.5
It's good.
out of 5.
Definitely worth watching. If you haven't seen it yet, you gotta see it.
Highly recommend it.
If you're a fan of superheroes at all, this is the movie we have to thank for the superhero boom we have now.
Basically, yeah. But this film, definitely watch it. Definitely
Check it out.
see it. Check it out. Most heartfelt superhero movie ever. Both 1 and 2. We'll get into 2 next time. See you later, guys. We're cutting it like super. My foot's asleep.
Oh shit.
My whole leg's asleep.